Hi, I'm Dr. Alan Lifton for Brainsplaining. Today I am brainsplaining basic healthy habits and wrong thoughts. The wrong thought today is about the idea that I just need to increase my personal responsibility, maybe my motivation or something like that. It's terribly important that we are on the right track. If you go in the kitchen and I say go in the kitchen and start cooking, and you start cooking, perhaps there's onions there and peppers and chicken, and you start chopping up some onions and some peppers and you saute them. And I walk in after you've started cooking and I say, well, where's the apples? You say, well, what apples? I said, for the apple pie. And you weren't trying to make apple pie, you were trying to make some kind of a chicken dish. It doesn't really matter how hard you work at making your chicken dish. It's never going to be a good apple pie. It's impossible. And that's exactly the problem with having one of these wrong thoughts and trying very hard to solve my problem of lack of motivation. This idea about the fact that it's my choices, it's my individual responsibility, and it's all down to me doing the right thing, and I just need to get more oomph or something. And so here's the thing about when I was a kid and I worked in a restaurant, it was just filled with smoke, and every table had an ashtray, and 100% of the people at the restaurant were smoking. And when you go in a restaurant now, there is no smoking. No one there is smoking. And the amount of smoking that's happening in this country over a period of time has decreased dramatically. So somehow everybody's personal choices all changed at the same time. Everybody suddenly all decided the same exact thing at the same exact time and in the same exact way. If this smoking decision is similar to the problem that we're having with eating. And I don't think that's accurate. I think there was a very massive public health campaign that changed our entire cultural habit, and so it's not so easy and comfortable to smoke now, and everybody tried to quit because there were forces acting towards that goal. This is also something that's been seen in the last 30 or 40 years with drunk driving. There was Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and the number of deaths associated with drunk driving dropped dramatically. The awareness in our culture changed, and people don't drunk drive as much as they used to. Still too much, but not as much. It's not the case that suddenly everybody all had the exact same idea at the exact same time. The obesity rate in children between the age of 2 and 4 is 15%. And there's a lot of difficulty with me thinking, these 3-year-olds, they're really having a lack of motivation. Oh, these 3-year-olds need a lot more personal responsibility. They got to make some choices. That doesn't make any sense. They're 3 years old. 15% is the obesity rate. And here's the thing about place. I find it a very spurious argument that the people in Colorado are just inherently better at making choices than the people in West Virginia. The obesity rate in West Virginia is 38%. The obesity rate in Colorado is 22%. That's almost double. It's not quite double, but it's not the case that people in West Virginia are just twice as bad at making decisions. It's something happening. In a book called Happy City by Charles Montgomery, there's an example of a group of people in one neighborhood compared to another neighborhood only 10 miles apart in Atlanta, where there's an average weight change of 10 pounds. And he argues that's because of the walkability of those neighborhoods and how much walking you do when you're there. That argues pretty strongly against the idea that this is because you don't have motivation. These aren't even Colorado people versus West Virginia people. These are Atlanta people in one neighborhood compared to another neighborhood. it's some kind of an influence that's happening. You'll kind of also see this when you go to someplace else, like if you go to Italy or you go to France, where people are generally much thinner than us. I don't think it's the case that they're just way better at choosing what to do. I don't think they just have inherently way more motivation and way more self-discipline. Of course, the French and the Italians will disagree with that opinion, but I don't think that's what it is. I think there's an enormous power pushing people to behave in a certain way. So here's the national statistics. The national statistics is about 20% of people get the recommended amount of exercise. And that's the minimum amount of recommended exercise. That's a really small number. Overweight or obese, which is a very poor measure of health, is present in 70% of Americans, so overall. I don't think 70% of Americans are a failure. I don't think that most of the people in this country are lazy people who are just making bad choices. It doesn't make sense. It's too many. It can't be that many of us. And also, the numbers have changed dramatically over time. In 1900, it was 0%. So 0% of Americans in 1900 were making bad choices, lacked self-discipline, didn't have behavioral control, and lacked motivation. And that number jumped from 0% to 70% if this were the main problem. So if you think, oh, I just need to get motivated, I just need to watch something and get myself pumped up, get out there and exercise, and then I can do it, you're probably trying to cook chicken and you're not going to get any apple pie from that. In reality, what you probably need to do is reach for being in the top 10 or 20% of the American population at having healthy behaviors. And that goal will get you to be not overweight and not obese and healthy. But that's somewhat of a more daunting task. Not an impossible task, but a more daunting task. It's a more realistic task, because that's the real problem. The real problem is if you want to be healthy, you're going to have to make it probably to the top 10%, definitely to the top 20% of Americans in health habits. And so it's not about, I don't know, watching a movie or finding some inspiration in a quote or just I'm going to make better choices. It's about learning a whole skill set. It's about actually changing who you are. And honestly, and people aren't going to like this, but it's about being un-American, because it's a small minority of Americans who are healthy. It's not most of us. Most of us are unhealthy. So you're going to be like not most of us. And a derogatory term that's used for that, and it's not a terribly derogatory term, but it's health nut. And health nut is a term that implies that you're going to be someone who's crazy. And crazy here isn't the kind of crazy that I usually talk about with delusions and hallucinations, but crazy used loosely in the English term, that means you're very different than the majority of us. Because you're healthy. You're a nut, you're crazy because you're healthy. And that's what you actually have to become. You have to become one of the healthy minority, and that's basically someone who's not following the trends of everyone else. So I hope that helps, and I hope that that's been brain-splained.